The first time I saw the property my parents had gifted me, I honestly thought it was a joke. A cracked asphalt lot on the edge of town, with weeds taller than my knees and a rusty sign that still said monthly parking $25. And when I turned to look at my family standing proudly beside their sparkling black SUV, they were smiling. Not the kind of smile that hides guilt or awkwardness, no, the kind that comes from genuine amusement. "See," my dad said, clapping my shoulder. "You got the open skies, Maddie. Fresh air, freedom." Then my mom laughed, adding, "You can always sleep under the stars if life gets too rough." They thought they were hilarious. Meanwhile, across town, my sister Rebecca had just been handed the keys to a 7-bedroom villa in the hills, complete with a pool, jacuzzi, and an ocean view so perfect it looked like a postcard. It wasn't favoritism anymore. It was mockery. "Hi, my name's Madeline Scott, though most people just call me Maddie. I'm 29 years old, born and raised in Santa Clara, California, and this is how my parents tried to humiliate me." But they didn't know that humiliation is the best kind of motivation. When they first told me about the inheritance split, it was during lunch at a fancy Italian restaurant, the kind my parents only invited Rebecca and her fiancé to. I'd been surprised to even get a call that morning. "Dress nice." Mom had said over the phone, "We're celebrating family." Celebrating, that word stuck with me, so I wore a blue dress, one of the only ones that didn't have a bleach stain from my night shifts at the diner, and showed up hopeful. Maybe for once, I thought, they were going to treat me like Rebecca. But when the waiter poured champagne and Dad lifted his glass, the truth came out, to Rebecca and Evan. He declared, beaming, and their new home, the villa in Pacific Heights. Everyone clapped. I smiled too, pretending to join in. Then Dad added, almost as an afterthought, "And Maddie, we didn't forget you, sweetheart. We've transferred that downtown parking lot to your name." Laughter followed. Even the waiter smirked. Rebecca giggled, "Hey, at least you'll have somewhere to park your dreams." They laughed harder. That moment right there was when something in me quietly broke. "You're watching her Retaliation." I whispered that night into my phone camera. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, because sometimes revenge doesn't come in fire. It comes in silence and profit. For months, I ignored the property. I didn't even drive past it. I just threw the deed in a drawer and focused on surviving. My apartment was small. The tips from waitressing were barely covering rent. And my car sounded like it coughed every time I turned the key. But every time I saw photos of Rebecca's villa on Instagram, champagne breakfasts, pool parties, brunches with the girls, that empty lot haunted me. Until one night, when I was leaving work around midnight, I passed by a new cafe that was always packed. The parking lot next to it had a bright neon sign that read $10 night parking pay by app. That's when it hit me. If their parking lot could make money, why couldn't mine? I drove straight to the address my parents had mocked me with. It looked the same, cracked, overgrown, abandoned. But beneath the dust, there was space, location, potential. I spent the next 3 weeks researching everything about small. Lot businesses, permits, lighting, security systems, even food truck leasing. Every night after my diner shift, I'd sit at my kitchen table, scribbling ideas on napkins. The dream started forming. What if I turned that worthless parking lot into a weekend food and event space? Of course, I didn't have money, not a cent beyond rent. But I did have something Rebecca didn't, stubbornness. I applied for a small business grant $50,000 for urban redevelopment. Then I pitched the idea to a local taco truck owner I knew, Marco. "If I clear the space and get power running, would you park your weekends?" I asked him. He grinned. "If you've got lights and customers, I'm in." That was all I needed to hear. I spent every weekend cleaning that lot, cutting weeds, painting faded lines, fixing the old sign by hand. My arms ached, my back burned, but I didn't stop. When my first portable light posts arrived, I cried. Not because I had a business yet, but because for the first time in my life, I was building something that was mine. The first event happened by accident. A group of college kids who parked there one night started playing music from their car. Then a food truck came by. Then another. By midnight, there were 50 people hanging out, eating, laughing, dancing. And every single one of them paid to park. I earned $372 that first weekend. It wasn't much, but it was everything, so I named the space Lot 29, after my age when it began, and made an Instagram account. Within 2 months, Lot 29 became the Friday night spot for college students, truck owners, and indie artists. We had food, music, and pop-up stands all under string lights I hung myself. And every weekend, the sound of laughter filled the same air my parents once mocked me with. When the local newspaper covered it, young woman turns abandoned parking lot into hot urban hangout. My mom sent me the link with a single message. Wow, didn't know you were serious about that old place. Proud of you. Honey, I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my phone. Proud? No, she was shocked. Because for the first time, I wasn't the family joke. I was the headline. 3 months later, Rebecca texted me, "Hey sis, any chance you'd let me host a private party at your lot? You know, to support local business." I stared at that message for a long time. Support local business. The same sister who once told me I'd never get anywhere without my parents' help. I typed back, sure, $3.00, €0 for the night. Includes setup, lights, and security. She replied with a laughing emoji. Lol, Maddie, I meant like a family discount. I didn't answer. The day of the party, she showed up in designer heels and sunglasses, acting like she owned the place. Her friends cheered when they saw the setup, string lights, live DJ, food stands. It was perfect until she tried to leave without paying. Oh, come on. She said, flipping her hair, "You're my sister." I smiled sweetly. Exactly. That's why I'm charging you full price. She didn't laugh that time. She swiped her card reluctantly, and I could almost taste the irony. The same family that once laughed at me for getting a parking lot was now paying me to use it. That night, as I locked up and looked at the empty space, I realized something. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about respect, something they'd never given me, but I'd built on my own. But I had no idea what was coming next, because a month later, when Lot 29 hit its first €10 month, my dad called. "Maddie, sweetheart," he said warmly, "we're so proud of you. Listen about that property. We've been thinking, since it was technically a family asset, maybe we should talk about revenue sharing." I froze. And just like that, I knew they weren't proud. They were greedy. That's when my real retaliation began. When my dad hung up, I just sat there staring at my phone, frozen between disbelief and laughter. A revenue share. The same people who mocked me for getting that cracked parking lot now wanted a share because it finally had value. I couldn't even be angry yet. I was too busy being stunned. Then slowly, that familiar heat rose in my chest. The same heat that burned through me when they'd handed Rebecca her villa keys while joking about my empty sky. But this time, I wasn't powerless. That evening, I called my friend Daniel, a quiet, brilliant guy who helped me set up the digital side of Lot 29. He worked in finance, the kind of guy who read tax codes for fun. I told him everything, the history, the new call, my parents' proposal. He was silent for a moment, then said, "You're not going to like this, Maddie, but technically, they can't take a cent. The property's under your name. You own 100%. I smiled. "Oh, I like that just fine." He laughed. "Then you have all the leverage. Just play it cool. Don't show emotion. Make them show theirs." That stuck with me. Make them show theirs. 2 days later, my mom called. "Sweetheart, we just think it's fair." She began sweetly. "After all, your father paid the original property taxes for years before giving it to you." I didn't respond immediately. I wanted her to feel that silence. "We're family, Maddie," she continued. "Rebecca agrees she thinks 10% would be fair for your father." I nearly choked. Rebecca agreed. The woman who had a villa, a pool, a husband who owned 2 Teslas, she agreed my parents, should get a cut of my parking lot business. I took a slow breath and said, "You know what, Mom? You're right. It is fair." There was a pause, the kind of shocked silence I'd waited my whole life to hear. "Oh, honey, that means so much," I interrupted. "I'll bring a lawyer to dinner Sunday. We'll draft the documents." That Sunday, they hosted me at the villa, Rebecca's villa, of course. The same marble floors, the same pretentious art, but this time I wasn't intimidated. I walked in wearing jeans, a leather jacket, and a calm smile. My laptop bag hung from my shoulder like a weapon. My dad greeted me with open arms. There's our little entrepreneur. I smiled back. There's my investor. He laughed, thinking it was a joke. We sat around the long dining table, Mom, Dad, Rebecca, her husband Evan, and me. Rebecca twirled her wine glass. So, little sis, tell us, how much money are you making, really? I opened my laptop, enough to make this conversation interesting. Her smirk faltered. I pulled up the financials, bright graphs showing steady growth. Lot 29 had made over $42,000 since launch. My dad's jaw actually dropped. My mom gasped. Rebecca blinked like she couldn't process it. Oh, wow, Mom whispered. We didn't realize it was that successful. I smiled. Yeah, success looks funny when you're not laughing at it. Rebecca shifted in her seat. So what's your offer, Maddie? Offer? Like I was negotiating with clients, not family. I took a deep breath. Here's what I think is fair, I said evenly. Since the land came from you and you believe you're entitled to a return, I'll do this legally. I slid 3 envelopes across the table, one for each of them. They opened them, Rebecca first, then Mom, then Dad. Inside each was a printed check for $1. 00. Rebecca frowned. What's this? I smiled sweetly. Your share. My dad blinked. Maddie, I don't understand. Exactly. I said quietly. You don't understand. You never did. Mom's face hardened. This is cruel and no, I said, leaning forward. What was cruel was laughing at me when you thought you were giving me nothing. What was cruel was watching me struggle while you gave her everything. This, I tapped the dollar bill, is symbolic. It's what my dignity was worth to you, $1. Rebecca's cheeks flushed. You're being dramatic. I turned to her slowly. And you're being predictable. For the first time in years, silence fell at that table. No one had a snide comment. No one laughed, just the sound of forks clinking on fine china, and the hum of their embarrassment filling the room. Finally, Dad said, We didn't mean to hurt you, Maddie. I nodded. Then don't ever again. I closed my laptop, stood up, and walked out, leaving the envelopes behind. Outside, the air felt different, lighter. I didn't even notice the tears until I was already driving away. That night, I went back to Lot 29. It was buzzing with people again, lights glowing, music drifting through the cool air. Daniel was there, collecting payments. He handed me a soda and said, You look like you just buried something. I laughed softly. Maybe I did. He studied me. You good. I nodded. Better than good. I think I just ended something I should have ended years ago. A week later, I got an email from my dad's lawyer. It was polite, painfully so. Dear M.S. Scott, as per your recent conversation with your parents, please provide documentation of the property deed for review. I smiled as I typed my reply. Dear Mr. Green, attached are all relevant documents. As you'll see, ownership is legally and solely under my name, per notarized deed transfer in 2018. Further attempts to dispute ownership will be considered harassment. Warm regards, Madeline Scott. And I hit send. Rebecca didn't take it as calmly. She showed up at Lot 29 the next Friday night, heels, sunglasses, attitude, and all. She stormed up to me while I was helping Marco restock drinks. You humiliated Mom and Dad, she hissed. They're devastated. I looked at her calmly. They humiliated me first for years. They were joking. I shook my head. Jokes stop being funny when the punchline bleeds. She opened her mouth to argue again, but then stopped. Because right behind me, a local journalist was snapping photos for a feature story titled From Empty Lot to Local Landmark. Rebecca froze, realizing she was now background in my success story. I turned slightly, smiling. If you're going to stand there, Rebecca, at least smile for the camera. You wouldn't want to look bitter in print. Her lips tightened. You've changed. No. I said softly. I just stopped letting you define me. That night, Lot 29 broke another record. $7,000 in a single evening. And while everyone celebrated, I sat alone for a moment, staring at the crowd. Every laugh, every light, every sound, it all came from the place they once called worthless. I realized then I hadn't just built a business. I built proof that I never needed their approval to matter. But the story wasn't over yet. because revenge has a way of circling back, especially when pride gets bruised, and mine was about to take a turn I never expected. The night I finally checked my bank app and saw 7 figures sitting in my account, I should have felt peace. But instead, I stared at the screen with a strange emptiness, remembering the day my parents laughed at me and handed me the deed to a piece of useless asphalt. That joke had turned into my empire. I built something real, something solid, while their laughter had faded into silence. Yet somehow, that silence was about to become the loudest sound of my life. It started with a notification from the bank. Account activity suspended pending legal claim. For a moment, I thought it was a mistake. Then my phone buzzed again, an email from my attorney marked urgent. I opened it and froze. My parents had filed a claim against me. They were accusing me of misusing family funds to start my business. Family funds, the same family who once told me to sleep under the stars because I had no house. My parents, the ones who gave my sister a villa, were now claiming they invested in my parking lot. I laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was hollow, because deep down, I knew this wasn't about money. It was about control. I called Daniel right away. He picked up on the first ring, his voice calm as always. "Maddie, what happened?" I explained everything, the claim, the freezing notice, the documents. There was silence on his end for a moment. Then he said, "They don't want to share. They want to remind you they still can reach you." I sighed, rubbing my temples. Then it's time I remind them they can't. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't break, I just acted. By the next morning, every asset I owned had a new name on it: Skyline Ventures, LLC. My lawyer, Claire, had everything ready within hours. Every lease, every partnership, every revenue stream moved quietly under the company's protection. By the time their lawyer tried to freeze my account, there was nothing left to touch. They thought they were freezing my power. They didn't realize I'd already moved the entire world they wanted to own. When Mom called that evening, her voice was shaking. "Maddie, what is this? The lawyer says your name isn't on anything anymore." I kept my tone even. "That's correct. Skyline Ventures owns everything now." There was a pause, then the sharp edge of anger in her voice. "You're playing dirty." I almost smiled. "No, Mom. I'm just playing by the rules you raised me with. You told me to protect what's mine, remember?" I heard Dad in the background shouting, "Tell her we'll sue for fraud." I said quietly, "Good luck proving fraud when I have receipts for every single thing I ever built." Then I hung up. For the next few weeks, I worked like a machine. Lot 29 wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. We hosted art fairs, food festivals, and pop-up cinemas. It became the talk of the city. Then one day, Daniel walked into my office, holding his phone with that look that meant trouble. "You need to see this," he said. It was a news article. Local real estate investor Evan Harris faces tax evasion charges. Evan, my sister Rebecca's husband. My mouth went dry as I read the details. The investigation was massive. Their villa, the one my parents gave them, was being seized. The photos showed Rebecca crying on the porch while reporters crowded around. I set my phone down slowly. I didn't smile. I didn't feel joy. I just whispered, "Life always balances its own books." That night, Rebecca texted me, "Happy now, you got what you wanted." I stared at her message for a long time before replying, "No, I never wanted this. I wanted respect." She didn't reply. I don't think she could. Weeks passed. Lot 29 kept growing, but something inside me shifted. My revenge had landed perfectly, yet there was no euphoria, just a strange, quiet sadness. Then one night, at 2 a.m, my phone rang. It was Dad. His voice was smaller than I remembered. "Maddie, your mom's in the hospital." My chest tightened. "What happened?" He sighed, defeated. "Stress, maybe. She's not eating. She keeps talking about you and Rebecca, about how everything went wrong." For a second, my armor cracked. "Can I come see her?" I asked. He hesitated, then said softly, "She doesn't want to see you right now." And just like that, the silence between us grew into a canyon I knew would never close. Still, 3 days later, I went to the hospital anyway. I didn't go inside. I left white lilies at the reception with a note. For what it's worth, I never wanted revenge. I just wanted respect. When I turned to leave, I saw Dad standing by the parking lot staring at me. For a long moment we didn't speak. Finally he said, "You really built something out of nothing, didn't you?" I nodded yes, out of what you left me. His eyes softened. We were cruel, weren't we? We thought we were being funny. I looked straight at him. You turned cruelty into tradition, Dad. I turned it into business. He exhaled. We lost you, didn't we? I smiled faintly. You never had me. And I walked away. 2 years later, I sat in the same parking lot where it all began, only now it wasn't just a lot. It was Lot 29, the beating heart of a company that spanned 3 cities. The asphalt shimmered under the string lights, the smell of coffee and laughter in the air. We had 2 new branches, Lot 42 and Lot 55. Skyline Ventures was growing faster than I could dream. My name was on magazines, interviews, business panels, yet every month I came back here, to this one patch of ground my parents once called a joke. Because this was where everything changed. Rebecca sold her villa after the tax scandal. She ran a small online boutique now. My parents sold their home too, the one they used to brag about to pay off legal debts. They lived quietly far away. And for once, I didn't feel like punishing them anymore. I didn't need to. The universe had already done it better than I ever could. I had already won. One evening, I stood at the edge of the lot, watching the sunset bleed into orange and gold. Daniel came up behind me holding 2 cups of coffee. Thinking about the old days, he asked. I smiled, always. He grinned. Funny how they told you you'd be sleeping under the stars. Now you own the damn sky. I laughed softly. Yeah, I guess I do. 6 months later, I got a letter in the mail handwritten shaky. It was from Mom, Maddie. It read, "I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to say I read your note from the hospital every day. You were right we didn't respect you. You didn't need our approval to be someone. You became someone all on your own. I'm proud of you. In the quiet way I should have been all along." I sat there reading it over and over until the ink blurred through my tears. I folded it carefully and slipped it into my desk drawer, right beside the deed to Lot 29, the place that started it all. For the first time in years, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel alone. I just felt free, and as I looked out through my office window that night, watching the glow of city lights reflecting on the rain, I whispered to myself, "They gave me nothing but an empty lot, and I turned it into a life."